Somehow civilization has produced the animal rights extremist. How did that happen? I ask my dad to take us back to what humans were like 200,000 years ago.
Well, physically they were like human beings from the neck downwards. The postcranial skeleton was essentially Homo sapiens, but the skull was very primitive. No chin, prognathous teeth, big brow ridges, no forehead sloping straight back into the widow's peak, and very little behind. Quite a small frontal lobes of the brain. And then something happened, and I think it was to do with the sociality. And this is connected with Robin Dunbar, who came up with the good idea of how many people in your address book, how many Christmas cards that you send out are actually read by how many people? And I'll bet you it's between 50 and 150, give or take 50 more if you like, but about that order. It's not 1,000, it's probably more than 10. So it's of the order of magnitude of the hundreds. By knowing people, it is meant that you can say hello to them and know their social status in relation to you and who they're connected to and who they owe money to or favours or whatever. So you know their social position. You don't have to fight over it each time.
Why that number? Why not 1,000?
It's the sheer size of the brain. And you can work out that if you measure it's only the outer surface of the forebrain we're talking about, the grey matter. And if you dissect that out and weigh it, compare it with the weight of the whole brain, then you have a certain ratio. And the human is a benchmark. By doing the same trick with other animals, you can determine how social they are. And the chimpanzees, if I remember rightly, are about 60. And the smoother the brain, the less people he knows. Whales know quite a lot of individuals. They can recognize individuals, and you can judge that from the folding of their brain. What is interesting is that vampire bats do it as well. And they are moral creatures.
How?
Because they go out and looking for blood, find a good mammal, slit its artery, spit on it to stop it coagulating and lap up the blood. They don't suck blood, they lap. Then they go back to the communal roost, and one goes up to another and says, I didn't find an animal last night, I'm hungry. So he regurgitates some blood and pays this. But he won't do it the second time unless the other one's paid him back. And you can work out that for this reason, that because they remember this social information about other vampire bats, that they are social animals and they have a morality. And they remember their debts and other people's debts, and just like human beings. And they've got bigger brains to accommodate it. A bee is not an individual. The equivalent of a human individual is a hive with the reproductive organs and feeding organisms and so on. The individual is equivalent to a cell, which you can dispense with. There goes a whole lot more. There they go. Shake some scurf out of your hair or whatever. And that is an indication of the dispensability of these individuals. What they do recognize is their class. That's a lovely word, class, and I mean it. And it is an entirely natural thing. I'm not claiming to be a better class or worse class than anybody else. Just I recognize that I belong to a class which is now called old.
Back to 200,000 years ago.
It was a time of rapid expansion from a few thousand individual human beings on Earth. We think most of them clustered in South and maybe a bit further north in East Africa. And having hit upon technology, of making an imagined article from an unimaginable beforehand, putting two ideas together to make a third, then we had weapons. And we could kill people at a distance by throwing something, a spear or whatever. And as soon as you do that, you lose the intimate contact which is necessary for appeasement signals. Very often dogs will fight, and unless it's been bred for evil purposes, they recognize, okay, you submit. They don't put in the killing bite. And that is very important because DNA is the driving script by which our bodies function. And the bodies function in societies, and the instructions are not to destroy other people's DNA, not to destroy other people, but to destroy the information that they carried. And it is the information that is in me that is would protect the same information in you. And they're using that information is using our bodies to fight or to defend against other people. So you've got this tribal system, family structure, and then rapid expansion, and human beings killing each other because they are strangers.
You are more likely to lay down your life for me than I am likely to lay down my life for you.
Oh yes, indeed, because the thinking chips in and says, well, he's old and post-reproductive anyhow, so what the hell? As they say, leave Granny out on the ice for the bear. The genes directed us to propagate themselves, and they only said more people, more people, more people. We thinking about it and realizing about it needed more land, and so for a family to earn a living, we had to get enough food and shelter and materials and so on. We had to fight other families and keep them off. There's no good setting aside that I'm not going to shoot to kill or hunt in that wood this year because I want the population to build up, because otherwise somebody will come over the hill and hunt for you and take it away. So there's this, I think, a huge territoriality. And we've seen how that territorial of villages, like this one here, goes into towns, counties, hundreds, shires, whatever, bigger and bigger units, nations, and then confederations of nations, and even intercontinental agreements, which is all cooperating so that you could defend yourself against attack by the other power.
Right, so cooperation is the mechanism that solves the problem of lack of appeasement.
Yes, yes, it solves the problem for you, but it doesn't solve the problem for the enemy, because you've overrun him.
Cooperation led to community, to farming, and, unfortunately, to environmental disaster.
I can't remember which genus it was, but basically they herded the grazing animals of the Siberian steppe until they killed the vegetation. They killed the predators. Population rose, overgrazed. The wind blew the topsoil into China, so they upped and followed it. And they've got enormously rich soils in China, which is wind-blown loess, I think it's called, topsoil from overgrazing. And the deserts stretch from China and Tibet and so on all the way to the Canary Islands. This huge swathe of northern landmass, temperate desert, and then burning, killing predators and allowing the herbivores to grow up so that you could kill them more easily. They grazed the plants down and kept it clear. Then eventually you've killed the grazing animals, as happened in Australia, and they allowed the vegetation to grow up. Then the fires in the summer were too hot, and they burnt the soil and the roots, and the wind blew it away.
So we are responsible for...
We human beings, yes, yes.
Many of the world's deserts.
Yes, there are only, I think, three in the southern hemisphere: the Western Australian, the Namib, and the Atacama. Have got northern currents from Antarctica, which dry the air, and the rain doesn't come ashore. I've been very privileged to have been to. I haven't been to Australia, but I'd like to go to that very much.
But the other deserts, the Gobi, the Sahara, they are man-made.
Yes. I mean, we had an old man called Wilfred Thesiger, came and stayed once when we were living in Spain, and he had shot, I think it was a crocodile, yes, I think it was a crocodile, in the middle of the Sahara, and the Energy Plateau. There was water there in the 1920s, so 100 years ago, and it was already becoming arid. I got to know Morocco over 20 years and saw the desert advancing because I was taking botanical tours and showing people and keeping lists of plants that we saw, and till there was none left. They said, and somebody said, but I think it's an exaggeration, that the desert is advancing as fast as a crawling child.
Given that we're capable of knowing between 60 and 150 people, more or less, how do we cope with cities?
Well, technology. And what is interesting is that by putting two ideas together to make a third, in every conceivable aspect of life and so on, we've given DNA the tools it needs to make more of itself. So our feelings which are generated largely by DNA, neurosecretion and so on, and they have caused us to get satisfaction from doing something. And it still goes on today. I'm going to try a little crackpot theory on anybody, and that is that money is society's measure of permission to move parts of the Earth's surface from one place to another. In other words, to use energy. It's a long, complicated background, but it does fit. But I'd like it attacked, please. It is DNA that is driving us to produce more, to have more children, to kill more animals, to eat more meat, eat more fat for the growing brain, which is largely made of fat, and so on. And that has enabled DNA to increase itself. And so if you start thinking about the biomass of human beings, but the weight of DNA, or if you like, the diversity of DNA, and human beings have this peculiar attribute of having a more diverse behavior than, I think, than all other animals that have ever lived. There's no other species I know has a National Health Service or has put a fellow on the moon. So this enormous diversity, but all that's happened in my lifetime. Just to finish your original question, that we aggregated into towns chiefly for defense. The big problems are supplying it with food. Farming does that. Hunter-gatherers can't make towns. And what limits a town is the drains. And until Bazalgette built the embankments down the sides of the Thames, London was at a maximum. Houses were floating on sewage, cellars were full of it, and so on. And then eventually they could drain it away, and the city could grow bigger. But it still needs materials in, waste out, energy in, and heat back into the night sky. This DNA says more of me, which means you have to go and get more food and protect ourselves better. If you have two armies of equal armament and strategy, then the one with the greatest number of people will win. So there's this huge selective pressure in favor of more all the time. And this is the driving force of the technology. And more particularly of energy. Because originally there was only the energy you could exert with your arms. Then there was the energy of wind mills and water. Then there was the external combustion engine in the lifetimes of my grandparents. And then something happened in 1952 when all the graphs began to go up. And it was, I think, to do with getting oil online. And once that was a steady flow of oil coming in, then the use of energy could increase again. People are horrified by what is happening in Darfur and the Central African. People are dying of starvation. Why? There's just too many for the land. They cannot support. All the aid in the world cannot sustain the reproductive rate of the human species. And I remember when I went to Nigeria in '62, talking to a hard-bitten, flea-bitten old man who said, of course, the worst thing we did was to dig a well. Because now the women, instead of walking 3 kilometers down to the river and back again, carrying jerry cans of water on their heads, they stay at home and have children. And the clinics we brought, and we went to Morocco in '87 for the first time, or '89 it was, and we saw the children. There's a sea of up to 5-year-olds, and then none, and then a handful of 8-10-year-olds, and Sue said to the Moroccan we were with, "What happened? Why are there so few? What happened to them? Oh, they died." That was before the clinic came.
Now you can see how we turn to the question of caring. Here's Dad's theory.
You're driving down a road and you a country lane, and you hit and injure possibly a series of animals: a frog, a worm, a fly, a mouse, a dog, a cat, a child, and so on. Now, they write down those lists in 3 columns. One of which, the first list, you would definitely stop and help. Second, well, it depends, it's a bit iffy. And the third, you wouldn't bother. I'll tell you, in the first list would be first the child, and then the cat and the dog and the rabbit. The second list would be the bird, the lizard, and the frog. And the third list, which you would not stop for, would be the fly, the beetle, and the slug, and so on. Why? They're all living, sentient things, because that is a measure of the amount of DNA we share with them. The first list of mammals, warm-blooded, skeletons, sensitive, and so on. The second list are the other vertebrates, and the last list are invertebrates, which have no backbone. Now, that is a measure of the amount of complexity and DNA that we share with those. It is the DNA in them, the information on that, which is recognizing the same information in us, that is manipulating us to protect it. And that is the neat way in which it works. With the mammals, there's a lot. We're very empathetic towards them. The other vertebrates, less so. And the invertebrates, too bad. It's bad luck of the draw. Let me tell you another little parallel. A woman rushes back into a burning house to rescue her 2 children. She succeeds in throwing them out of the window and they're caught, but she dies in the attempt. What's going on there? The information which in the children, which they share with their mother, is directing her to behave in that way. But what is more interesting is that somebody sees the woman running into the flames and screams. Now, she's not actually helping, but she is telling the neighbors what a caring person she is. And so she's displaying, look at me caring, the DNA in her, which is the same as the children, and manipulating her to behave in this particular way. And so there's this competition. And all human beings compete all the time. Look at us now, father and son, competing, as it were, for intellectual space, or whatever you call it, or bright ideas. And people compete in any conceivable way. But that woman is, look at me caring, is a very important social game which people play. And it's all to do, mine's bigger than yours. It's exactly as an extension from the car driver who hits and injures an animal. He won't go back and say, I ran over a fly the other day, but he could well, this is to impress people, like-minded people, he could well say, I sadly injured a dog, but I took it to the vet and we rescued it and so on. I am a sensitive, caring person, and look at me caring for this animal. That first of all, I care for my family very well, and secondly, my cousins and aunts, and the village and the town, and so on, and the nation. I'm patriotic. Being patriotic is very important. It was in the First World War, certainly, and having medals and so on are all part of the tradition. But it's it comes under the umbrella of a way of looking at the human behavior called transactional analysis by, I think, a remarkable man called Eric Byrne, and he produced a book called The Games People Play. And we do play games. We are demonstrating now that we are thinking people and are concerned with others. Other people show that they are concerned but not necessarily thinking. There's quite a nice category that the young have nothing to boast of except their genes, so they specialize in beauty and athleticism. Middle-aged, you come into a place and put your car keys and cell phone on the table where everybody can see that, oh yes, he's all right. And they make ugly bulges in your trousers if you carry them in your pockets. And lastly, you think that when your children have grown up and gone, your mind has begun to weary, but you try and sell the last thing which you think is wisdom, but other people don't necessarily follow you. If you get rid of hunting, you're losing an enormous area of human expertise and diversity. So why not ban people from saying they're lesbian or whatever? It's the same sort of thing that you're banning a category of thought.
With that in mind, it would be madness to ban hunting, but it would be madness to ban campaigning against hunting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, equally so. Yes.
Do you have a sense that because we are in a post-war, consciously cooperative state, society is more likely to favour an anti-hunting view than a pro-hunting view?
Yes, I think it is, yes. And life is precious. In fact, it's not. Because preciousness is an attitude of mind. It's not something that is in the hunting itself, but is what people think about it. And again, I think it's a matter of display. The games people play, all sorts of things. Child knocks over a mug. Oh, look what you made me do, is another game, and so on. And to show that you are caring is a very important message to get across to other people when the atmosphere is that way inclined. I think that our approach should be strictly rational and logical and humble, and we seek correction. The most dangerous animal on earth is a man who knows that he's right.
Thank you, Dad. That's it for this episode of the Field Sports Channel podcast. Follow the links below to listen to or even watch more of them.